Foundation and members of other organizations that are involved with those issues. The Board of Directors then moved to seek a project that would address those needs, and the Local Service Committee, led by Heather Broadhead, invited applications from organizations in the city, and they submitted proposals. So 4 of those proposals will be presented to you today. And to welcome our guests, I would ask you to now have Stephen Knox, who is our immediate past president and was involved with the Local Services Committee, to introduce our first presenter. Steve?
I know some of you have tag teams, so I'm going to introduce, you've all been introduced. Our first presentation will be by the London Affordable Housing. So Larry McKenzie would like to come up and do your presentation. Bring whoever you want, and please introduce any of your guest speakers. Thank you.
And who wants the
Hi, I'm Stu Everhart. I'm with the London Affordable Housing Foundation. London Affordable Housing began in about the year 2000. We are a charitable organization, fully incorporated. We have a strong board, functioning board. We're concerned with the fact that people in this community should have affordable, available housing where they can live with dignity and security. We bring together several partners to increase the supply of environmentally sustainable affordable housing, to address the chronic need for affordable housing, which is substantial in this town. We'll get to it in a minute. Our first unit was on Savannah Road, 2005. It's a community of 14 row houses with 2 to 3 bedrooms, so it's for families. The rent is about 80% of market, and we run it very well through our board. The second center that we have, we used to be a United Church, but it's been refigured into an apartment with 25 sale units, 4 of which are fully accessible, and by accessible we mean you get your electric wheelchair in there. This was finished in 2014, was almost immediately fully subscribed. We've made some changes as the years go by, and it's now onward and upward in terms of our progress. As we heard last week, for several thousand, probably 5,000 individuals, families, groups who have application in for affordable housing, and we're sort of a drop in a bucket, but as Marvin Reed said, the journey of 1,000 miles is the first step. We've recently been approved to build a new building, about which we're very excited. And it's an apartment building of 5 stories, 41 safe, affordable housing, and 1-bedroom units with 9 accessible rooms. It's at 1045 Dundas Street, which is just near the old Kellogg plant. So we're very pleased with the way this is going. I'm going to have Dale Boost, who's our project manager and a developer in his own right. But we hope that the shovel will be in the ground in April, and we'll have full occupancy in 2020. So Dale, would you like to say that?
Hi, my name is Dale Boost. I'm another volunteer with London Affordable Housing Foundation. You know, we hear so much about the news, affordable housing. Okay, Mr. Trudeau's got $40 billion, so it's going to affordable housing. That's done and dusted, so everything's okay there. We should concentrate on the North American Free Trade Agreement or SNC or something else, but we don't, as a public, really see the background that has to go into developing a project to bring it onto the street, that the citizens of London can make use of it. And that's why I wrote today, very briefly, on the project development. We purchased a property in 2015 in anticipation that we might receive funding. Then we're into the process of engaging with an architect to investigate on this site how many units could actually be on this site, where is the zoning, are there services around, can we sit with the city and talk about sanitary stormwater, hydro, is this a feasible site to be involved with or not? Once that has been established, then we're going to be approaching the government for financing. And Housing Development Corporation in London handles the funding situation from the federal, provincial, and civic government agencies. So they will actually initiate an RFP, a request for proposal, to take a project like ours, or another one, submit in competition to try to get approval for funding. Our project was approved to go forward with funding. Then we were in the process of, okay, where are we standing with regard to zoning? That site needed a zoning amendment. We were in the city for a zoning amendment. We had our architect engineers prepare a site plan. The site plan agreement was initiated with the city of London. We had to do an environmental site assessments, number 1 and 2 on the project site, plus pay for a soils report. We've done all of this work leading up to the point where we're hoping to start construction. When we finally got the final commitments from the government, HDC gave us initial approval. The final commitment was at Christmas of last year. And now we have 9 days to finish our drawings and get into the ground April 1st. And we're going to be very, very close to that. So through all this process, the housing need, as Stuart indicated, 4,000 families or people looking for housing. London is the 5th worst city in Canada for housing crisis. There is such a big need here. It's really, really disproportionate to the rest of Canada. We have our unit, our 41 unit project, and there's another unit, a 50 unit, going to be built this year. So we're going to get 100 units new into this year. There are some started last year that will come on stream this year by. So that's the process. And overall, from start to finish, it will be about 5 years. From when we purchase the site until the tenants move in, middle of summer next year. Thank you for your time. I'll turn this over to Larry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Larry and I are very pleased and agreed last year to be co-chairs of the fundraising committee. And we were very delighted when Helen and Andy Street agreed to be our honorary chairs. I'm sure most of you have heard of this wonderful couple. And we want to thank you for giving your generous time today to listen to our appeal for funding and our goal of $1.5 million. And I'll turn it over to Larry and he'll give you more information.
Thank you, Helen. Helen. Yes, thank you, Helen and Andy, sorry. And thank you, Betty. I'm a little discomforted today because I'm the only guy in this room wearing a tie. And it shocked me as I came in and all the Rotarians were coming in and guests were coming in. Nobody had a tie, but Larry shows up with a tie. Anyway, well, it shows you how much I think of you, and I would actually wear a tie.
We've got one.
Sorry, well, there's 2 of us, good. Thank you very much for partnering with me, so I'm not totally the odd man out. Specifically, what we're asking Rotary to do is to consider a gift, a donation to the London Affordable Housing of $75,000, payable over up to 5 years, in which we want to build a common room. And this common room really fits so much well within some of the points here in the 4-way test. This room is going to be used by our tenants for a variety of social and familial events. So when we look at this, I look at your point 3 here in your 4-way test. This will really build goodwill in that apartment building, give them opportunity, whether they have cards, whether they have prayer meetings, whether they have bridge clubs or whatever they have. But it will build goodwill and better friendships out in that building. So it's really going to be helpful there. And it will be beneficial to all concerned, because these people will join in the community, and also they will be inviting people to the building and using this facility. So Rotary's impact will be much greater than just the common room. It will be relational building and community building. Going forward, also, I want to say the gift of $75,000. When you really look at the gift, for us as an economic multiplier, it's a multiplier of 10. You give us $1, we can turn it into $10. And we do that with the government grants that Dale mentioned earlier, and a commercial mortgage that we get on the property. That's payable by we pay that back with the rents we collect. So your impact is much greater than our request of $75,000. I want to offer you as well the opportunity to come and visit any of our properties. We'd love to show you the 2 properties we exist, so maybe either the full Rotary Club or the committee itself wants to visit. We'd love to have you come. And I'll now turn it over to some questions. Any questions? Yes, sir.
How much of your equity that you need to raise, $1.5 million, have you raised to date?
We've raised in the range of about $225,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
If I needed affordable housing, I make an application to the authority. On what basis is that application judged?
Well, it really works out that once the building is built, we own and operate the building. And the applications will flow through our property managers. And the principal criteria, you cannot have household income over $37,000. So if you have like $40,000, you would not be eligible. And in the 2 buildings we operate, to give you a sense of the need, people in those 2 buildings the average income is about $22,000. So you're really helping people who are really, I think we use the word marginal, and financially marginal. And it's really, and by the way, roughly 80% of them are women and women with women-led families. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. Our next presentation will be the London Health Sciences Center, talking about the first episode mood and anxiety program. Alison McCloskey, and I know Dr. Elizabeth Osuch is going to be doing the primary presentation. So, and Larry?
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. My name is John McFarland, from the CEO of the London Health Sciences Foundation, proudly wearing a tie today, in that count. I'm thrilled to be here to talk about FEMAP, which is truly has been and continues to be a transformational program of London Health Sciences Center, fully funded through donor support. And I'm going to welcome Dr. Beth Osuch, who's going to talk to us about the program and the impact it's having in your community, and some of the partnerships we're already involved with. And then, so I'll ask Dr. Osuch to speak, and then I'll come in at the end. I also want to introduce Alison McCloskey, my colleague from the foundation as well. So Beth, I'll turn it over to you for now.
Full disclosure, 2 of your applicants are actually related, because we're working on some stuff with YOU, which you will hear about when I get to the end of my slides. Okay, so here's the problem. Disability-adjusted life years is the number of years that are lost to disability, and it turns out that mental illnesses are at the top of the World Health Organization list of causes of disability-adjusted life years in developed countries. The major contributors to that are depressive disorder, drug use disorder, and anxiety disorder. And that red line indicates to you the peak of those illnesses in terms of their prevalence. Their onset is before the age of 25. Which is fascinating because, as it turns out, as I said, the vast majority of these illnesses start before the age of 25, yet that's the age group that has the fewest services that are geared towards them. The prevalence of anxiety and depression is increasing in our youth. Talk to anybody who works with our youth, they will tell you that. And yet, early intervention and treatment programs that can reverse symptoms and prevent chronic illness is rarely available. FEMAP is one of those available programs. It's unique in that it addresses the gap in youth experiencing the recent onset of mood and anxiety disorders. It's the first of its kind in Canada with a unique model aimed at actually reversing the illness and getting people back on their normal developmental trajectory so that they don't spend a lifetime of disability-adjusted life years, right? It is, in fact, the only program of its kind in this region. And it's an integrated multidisciplinary program that includes psychology, psychiatry, social work, addictions, counseling, family therapy, and group therapy, all in a youth-friendly location, which you might know it's a couple of houses down from the St. Joe's parking lot on Richmond Street, south of Grosvenor. FEMAP is a unique model of care. 4/5 of the people who come to us come without a physician referral. A physician referral is not required to get into our program. The first appointment generally lasts 1 to 2 hours instead of the customary 15 minutes that is the case at most programs. The average number of appointments of people who engage with us is 14, and there are no artificial limits to the number of times people come to see us. Those are all decisions made based on clinical care. There are approximately 60 people on the wait list right now, and last year we had over 3,500 visits. The treatment decisions are made in a clinical case conference that is a multidisciplinary team. And when youth are not appropriate for our services, we help try to facilitate them to get other services, or sometimes, every now and again, somebody calls us who really is in need of tertiary mental health services, and we reassure them and send them on their way. And again, it's a multidisciplinary team that includes family and addictions. So, because FEMAP is funded exclusively by donor dollars and research, we have some data, and I just want to share data with you from 3 of our recent publications. This was recently published in Psychiatric Services, which is an American Psychiatric Association journal. Emerging adults who contacted our program had extensive prior help seeking, which actually belies that first episode is a misnomer. Actually, people have tried to get a lot of help. 77% of them have sought help at their school before coming to us. 73 have seen their family doctor, often been given a medication, but still it's not adequate. And a third of them have already visited the emergency department. Interestingly, on average, the people who come to us have had 3 different kinds of traumatic experiences, which tells you a little bit about what they've had to endure. These are 16 to 25-year-olds, by the way. The symptom scores that they complete for us indicated moderate to severe levels of depression, moderate anxiety, and low satisfaction with quality of health. In fact, they're scoring 2 standard deviations below the age-based norm on life satisfaction, health satisfaction. And interestingly, this is probably the most important, they're under functioning or not functioning 4.3 days per week on average, which is a huge amount of interference with their education, with their work foundation, with their social foundations that are going to last them the rest of their lives, or not, if they don't get better. So then the question becomes, is our treatment effective? And we do have some data on this. Follow-up, this is intermediate term follow-up, indicated significant improvement on all measures, including depression, and that was both statistically and clinically significant improvement in depression scores. Statistically significant improvement in anxiety sensitivity scores, significant improvement in quality of life satisfaction, and that variable about functioning, that was also both statistically and clinically significantly improved with treatment. This is intermediate term follow-up, which is about 4 months. Patient satisfaction was high, with 90% of the patients rating FEMAP positively. There are some additional system advantages. This is a publication by one of our colleagues in the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry recently that compared our patients with people from the Institute of Clinical Evaluative Sciences database on all matched people in our location. FEMAP users had more rapid access to psychiatrists relative to non-users. And in the year following admission, FEMAP users had lower rates of emergency room visits for mental health care reasons. So this does in fact save the system money because it keeps people away from emerge by actually treating them. Cost effectiveness, this is our third publication that came out recently about health utilization costs. On average, over 1 year, FEMAP users had significantly lower costs compared to non-users. And those lower costs were for ambulatory care services, inpatient services, and drug benefit claims. Interestingly, they actually had higher rates of cost for physician services, primarily because they had greater access to psychiatry. But on average, when you sum all those costs, their costs were lower overall. The challenge, the demand in our community is growing. 60 youth are waiting, as I mentioned, and they're waiting between 18 to 20 weeks to get in. The wait list continues to grow, preventing the program from providing timely treatment. And of course, we depend on philanthropic dollars. The solution is, it's not yet, expansion of FEMAP services to serve more youth faster. And the idea here is to get a bigger space and more staff and a bold community vision, which is how this presentation links with the one you're going to hear from YOU, because we're talking about developing a youth wellness hub where needs can be met rapidly and a continuum of integrative services with other community services, including housing, including social supports, including education, etc. So here's our funding opportunity. We're going to go back to John.
So, as you'll have seen from the materials that we provided to you, we're respectfully asking for the sum of $250,000 over 5 years. You've heard Beth talk about the sort of the challenge, and we're going out to our community. We're hoping to raise over a period of 4 to 5 years, $2.5 million to support what we would call, I guess, the expansion of FEMAP, both in terms of people, because I think Beth would agree that part of the challenge is lack of experts to provide the level of care required, but also space. And YOU is going to be great. Will be a great partner. It has been and will continue to be a great partner with us, with the Youth Wellness Hub and other programs. So this is truly a community effort, although it's ironically a London Health Sciences Center program. This is really a community-based program, pulling many agencies and many organizations together. And I think it's a terrific opportunity for the city and for the region, beyond simply LHSC. So that's sort of the ask, if you will. So what does that mean in terms of recognition? We would be actually looking for Rotary to be the lead gift in this sort of campaign, this $2.5 million campaign, to kickstart us, to get us moving so that we can carry out some of the goals of the future FEMAP. So we can celebrate, through our foundation, we have lots of opportunities for recognition, including obviously media presentations, welcoming to a Donor Distinction Society, which is a donor society that we have, and we have a dinner every year. We have donor walls that you'd be recognized on, plaquing, and I can. An interesting one is the Country Classic Auction. I don't know if anybody here has been to the Country Classic Auction, but it's one of our big events in the fall. It's been a big event that has enabled us to raise money for our mental health programs. And it could be that we could announce a gift such as this to inspire others that evening to give. And we've raised as much as, I think this year, $300,000 in 15 minutes at Country Classic Auction. What a great way for this gift to be a catalyst to double that night, to go to $500,000 or even $600,000, all from the Rotary Club. The catalyst from the Rotary Club. So let's put it this way: we've got lots of ways that we can really give the recognition the Rotary Club truly deserves, because this is an inspiring moment, because the youth in our community need these services. There's no government funding, it's fully funded by donors like you individually and collectively. So, so that's what we're thinking, and happy to, Beth's happy to answer any questions. I don't answer questions, but anyway, go ahead.
I have one question for Beth.
Yeah.
Sorry, but earlier in your presentation, you talked about there's the average of 3 traumatic experiences.
Different kinds. of
Different
traumatic
kinds. Could you give me a
experiences.
couple of examples of what that might be?
Assault, sexual assault, being assaulted by a partner, being a victim of theft, being in a natural disaster, being in a car accident, those kind of things. Yeah.
In Rotary, we like to be big in investing in things that are sustainable. So
Yeah.
how does your program become sustainable at the end of 5 years?
Right.
What's the strategy?
This is actually a very important time because you may have heard that there was an announcement from the Ministry of Health from the province about healthcare and how healthcare is going to be redesigned, if you will, with an emphasis on community integration. And the fact is that London is actually a teeny bit ahead of the curve on that because we have been working with YOU on this idea of a youth wellness hub, and other places in the province have been doing so as well, to recognize the fact that having silos to deliver these kind of services is not helpful, particularly for young people who don't know how to access different parts of the system and who are at such a developmentally pivotal age that if they can't get their proverbial act together, right, they will lose a lot of promise for their future, including the ability to sustain their livelihoods potentially. I think I was tangential on that, but the ministry
I'm
is
talking
moving,
about sustainability
yeah,
of
the
your
ministry is moving
services.
forward, right, the ministry is moving forward in that. And LHSC has recently made a commitment to promoting this kind of approach. And everybody knows that hospital-based care is the most expensive kind of healthcare on the planet. We cannot afford to keep doing these things in the footprint of the hospital. We need to be moving services out of the hospital into community integrated services. Yeah.
You mentioned that these diseases are on the rise,
Yeah.
especially among youth. Why is that? And if we know why, is anything being done in the way of prevention?
How much time do you have?
30 seconds.
Yeah, I can't do justice to it in 3 seconds. I think it's multifactorial, and I think there are a lot of roots to that problem, and I don't think there's gonna be a quick solution. I think we're gonna have to ride this one out and try to get people the help they can until our society can start maneuvering things so that it's more supportive for our young people. And if you wanna talk about that later, we can talk about that.
If the goal is 2.5 in total, can you give a breakdown in terms of what you see as being of that 2.5 capital costs associated with the facility versus the other sort of larger components of that 2.5?
Sure, in general terms, we're looking at about 1.5 and 2.5 will be people. The remaining $1 million will be enhancements to the space that we would, and frankly, building the space that we need to build to house FEMAP in this different location. So it's about $1.5 million to $2 million people versus people meaning experts who are going to provide services. Thank you.
So is the 1.5 is that a nest egg, or is that sort of, you see the income generated off that 1.5 is going to?
I think it's going to tide us over until the ministry starts to recognize that we need to actually have the monies funneled differently. And this is a Ontario-wide, actually it's a nationwide initiative to get youth wellness hubs. And different provinces are in different stages of that. Ontario is in a sort of an early stage of that. If you look at places like British Columbia, they're well on their way to having 21 youth wellness hubs located across their province. So it's sort of a matter of
So would it be
time.
fair to clarify the $1.5 million is operating costs? Paying salaries, staff, keeping the doors open and providing
I would
services.
call it development costs, to be honest, because it's actually a new model, because it expands beyond mood and anxiety to a more integrated system, so it's really development costs. I'm just trying to cut this off, but what's I can feel it.
In your funding model and making this sustainable, are you considering fee for service?
Well, the physicians are already paid fee for service, as it turns out.
Right, but I'm talking about charging clients fee for service.
You know, most people 16 to 25-year-old don't have a lot of money when they have mental illnesses.
No, but their parents do.
Well, you know, that's a question of healthcare reform across the province, because that's incorporating fee for service into the healthcare model, and I am not really privy to those kind of discussions.
Just let me say thank you again for taking the time to listen to us, and also to the other presenters who are here today. These are 4 great projects, and I really feel for you because I know it's going to be a difficult decision, but thanks for hearing us.
Thank you, John, Beth, and Allison. Our next presenter is the it's Mission Services of London, the Rothholm Women and Family Center, Prevention of Homelessness Among Families, Program Erica.
Thank you, Steve. I love how he actually lowered the mic for me even before. I'm vertically challenged, everyone knows it. Let's see if I can, excellent, this is working. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for the opportunity for inviting Mission Services of London here, and me as the representative of Mission Services of London. To those who are tuning remotely, thank you for tuning in as well. My hope is that today I can give you a bit of a recap of the proposal that you've already read, that you have had a chance to review. So I'm not necessarily going to go super in depth, but if you would like me to get more in depth during Q&A, I'm happy to do that. So first of all, I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you. The Rotary Club of London has been a tremendous partner in the work of Mission Services of London, particularly through the Rothholm Women's and Family Shelter branch. You actually made possible an activity room with computer access. You made that possible in 2014, all the way to 2016, for the families at Rothholm, for the kids there who previously could not do homework on site. So this has been a wonderful addition to the shelter and has helped the families search for housing, stay connected with loved ones who are far away. It's really made a difference. You've also helped to connect with Interact and Rotaract, who painted the playground and refreshed a lounge there. So all over the place where you're walking through Rothholm on a tour, to which I invite you all, by the way, you can see the impact of this club over the years, and I'm hopeful that that partnership will continue. So today, just a little bit of a recap for those who aren't as familiar with Rothholm. It's a family emergency shelter. It's actually the only shelter of its kind in about an hour-and-a-half drive of London. So that's Windsor to Hamilton to Peel region. And it can house up to 20 families. If families are large, then it can house a few fewer, because we split them up. Maybe, you know, it's a family of 6 to 8 to 10. They'll take up 2 rooms. The reason that Rothholm is unique is that it's not a violence against women shelter. Men do live here, and it doesn't have the same level like barbed wire to different entrances, etc. The same level of security that you would see when there is actually a threat of violence to those who are inside. We actually work with ANOVA when there is a family who comes to us and we suspect that there might be a violence scenario, and we basically trade families if need be for those who are ready for a little bit different environment. Now, Rothholm exists, sadly, because about a quarter of children in London, Ontario experience poverty, and hundreds experience homelessness. So that's why we are here, to provide safe shelter, a safe harbor. We saw nearly 400 children and about the same number of adults last fiscal year come through Rothom for emergency shelter. And in the last fiscal year, our occupancy was 46% above the prior 3-year average. At one point, it was actually 200%. And if you want to ask me during Q&A, I'm happy to tell you how we did that. So there's a family homelessness crisis in London, and very few people are talking about it. I'm encouraged that we are talking about it here today. Rothom is much more than a shelter as well, though. It also has support services like the PHAF program, Prevention of Homelessness Among Families program. There are 3 components to this program: shelter diversion as the first line of response. So it's a housing first model, looking at diversion first, and emergency shelter truly only as a last resort. And when emergency shelter is necessary, there's housing selection and housing stability support to help the family exit emergency shelter quickly, and then once they're housed in a more stable way, maintain that housing so that they do not re-enter shelter. That is the program that the proposal today centers around. And we know that it works because we've actually conducted a program evaluation. Government funding was provided to launch the program and to evaluate the program. And it's also a partnership with Dr. Cheryl Forchuk at Lawson Health Research Institute, the Ontario Trillium Foundation, and the City of London. A subset of the families that received shelter diversion services at Rothom participated in this study, and it was statistically significant. It really added up to more than 100 people who participated. The findings were very interesting. Before I get into the findings of the effectiveness of the program, which are the really amazing ones, I will tell you that we found out there are causes for family homelessness. Sometimes we were surprised at what they were. Lack of understanding of the system. Newcomers, for instance, not that the only people who are at Rothom or seeking service are only newcomers, but as an example, if a person's a newcomer, they might not realize what their right is as a tenant. So that's an example of lack of understanding. Escaping is a solution. We saw parents who were actually uprooting their family and moving them to a different city because they weren't sure how to cope with their child being bullied in school. And the solution was to uproot the family, even though it meant experiencing homelessness in a different city. There's also difficulty with conflict, something that may seem very simple to you and me, but self-advocacy or being able to confront a landlord who might actually be issuing an illegal eviction or things like this. And then life challenges, mental health and addiction, education, lack of support. And this was particularly interesting to us. The PHAF program works because it addresses these determinants of family homelessness. It actually prevents, it doesn't just remediate family homelessness. And it does it by using a housing first approach through shelter diversion as a first response whenever possible. I have to say that shelter diversion is not possible in 100% of instances because sometimes people come to our door and they've already been evicted, so we can't do diversion at that point. They need to come in to emergency shelter and we can support them in a different way. Shelter diversion, when it is used, works for 97% of the families who use it. 97%. Only 3% of the families who agreed to engage in shelter diversion services ended up in emergency shelter. And in those instances, it was either because the family didn't feel safe in the returning to their previous housing situation, or there just wasn't enough time in the end. We were not able to find an alternative for them. Let me pause here also to explain shelter diversion a little bit. It's all in the proposal, but suffice it here to say, What it means is helping a family avoid entry into emergency shelter altogether. Either we help them stay where they are by advocating with landlords, asking for extensions, coming up with the rent arrears payment plan, etc., and walking that journey with them, or they move to a different unit, what we call a lateral move, or maybe there's family, maybe there's friends. We're basically looking at every alternative possible to emergency shelter, because emergency shelter is a traumatic experience for the parents and also for the children. And one thing I will say is that without the PHAF program, without this shelter diversion piece, 100% of those families would have been in emergency shelter. But lo and behold, they could have been somewhere else and not have to go through that trauma. The effects are long-lasting. This is prevention. It's not just remediation. So what do I mean? Here it is. We found through the study that contacting these families who had been successfully diverted, meaning they attained stable housing, 18 months after the stable housing was attained, meant they were still housed. They hadn't been evicted, they didn't have Hydro Red cards, they were still housed in a stable situation 18 months after. And these are folks who sometimes had demonstrated significant challenges in maintaining housing before. But it's due to the housing stability supports that also come with this program and the life skills coaching one-on-one customized to the family that made this possible. And by the way, the other 10%, it's unknown. We don't know where those families are. We couldn't get in touch with them. We know they're not in our emergency shelter. So, good chance that this has an even better rate of success long-term. Now, the other thing that is particularly inspiring to me about the PHAF program is that it has the potential to be game-changing, not just for the families today. And let's understand what the families today are facing. Children that experience homelessness can present developmental, behavioral, academic challenges early in life, later in life, depression, mental illness, etc. For the parents, it actually can cause higher rates of anxiety, depression, even post-traumatic stress. It's actually quite a traumatic experience to go through this. Emergency shelter is not the place that someone wakes up one day and says, gee, I think I'm going to go to emergency shelter today. So the average age of the family head, usually a single mom, seeking help through Rotham is 33 years of age, prime child rearing age. Through the PHAF program, we can teach her the life skills necessary not just to attain housing, but to maintain it in the long term. And she's going to pass it on to her children. And by the time those children's children come along, hopefully they won't even know what it's like to be at risk of homelessness. So it has the potential to break the cycle, the multi-generational cycle of poverty, and that is actually where the true gem lies in this program. It's absolutely game-changing for our city. So what does it take to bring this program about? It takes community. It doesn't take just the families being willing to participate and engage and be active in exiting family homelessness. It also takes you and me, and that's why I'm here today. It takes a pooling of talent, of will, of resources, and time. So I'm here today to ask if you will help. $50,000 a year for 3 years, for a total of $150,000, will help families go from much more than just the risk of emergency shelter to a house, 4 walls and a roof. It really is a transition, a journey from despair to hope and to an entirely different life for generations to come, potentially. This is a project that, in my humble opinion, is the very definition of Rotary's goal of protecting mothers and children. It requires an investment of approximately $200,000 a year to run this program. One thing that would not have been in your proposal, because it actually was announced shortly after, and it's fantastic news, is that the London Community Foundation has granted a Vitality grant to this program. of $250,000 with the aim of extending the fundraising runway to lend stability to this program. And we have committed on our end to evangelize and to actually, stand at every possible corner and shout into the four winds to try and engage more support for the families who are using this program. The goal is really to raise about $1 million by around this time next year. And that is because it would provide a 5-year fundraising runway. So when we talk about stability, it's not about depending on any one source of funding, government included. Government funding is actually winding down for this program in the spring of 2019, so we're pretty nearly there. It's about pooling a variety of resources together in such a way that the strength is in the numbers, and it will actually stabilize over the long run. I'm happy to tell you that since early 2018 to today, we have been able to raise more than $650,000 towards this. We're not there yet, and I really do hope that you will make a decision to join this journey, to join the families, and give them an opportunity for a different tomorrow. We commit to continuing the fundraising and the community engagement so that the program will be stable in the long run. It has gone through launch, it has gone through evaluation, it absolutely works. Now it's about extending it into the long term until it is no longer needed. That is it for me. Are there any questions? Yes?
What's the average time that a family typically stays with you until you find them permanent housing?
The question is, what's the average time that a family typically stays with us until we find permanent housing? It's a difficult question. There's no typical, it depends on the family. For some, they actually are with us for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, incidentally, is actually enough time to do shelter diversion. So some of them are very short time. Some of them 30 days if they have to come into emergency shelter. And let's say that they are engaging in PHAP, in the housing stability supports. After they are housed, we remain in touch with them and we help them through life skills coaching, like budgeting, etc. It might be 18 months before we truly say Rotham is no longer in contact at all with that family, but it's different levels of support. That's it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Our final presentation, Steve Cordes and Barry Harrison. Would you please come tell us about Youth Opportunity Unlimited?
I can't talk and click, so Barry clicks and I talk. I can only do one of those two things. Good afternoon, everybody. Let's start by thanking you all for engaging community in this process and dedicating the amount of time I know you've already dedicated to get to the point where we're looking at potentially 4 projects, and from there going forward to not only selecting a project, but actually the hard work that comes into supporting the project that you raise, that you decided to support. So thank you so much for all that you are doing for this community. We're going to talk a little bit about youth opportunities so you understand what the organization is all about, and then zero in on the project that we've asked you to consider, and that is our New Edition campaign. We've been engaged in the journey around New Edition for several years now, and it all actually started as Youth Opportunities was launching its existing affordable housing program, which is at the Cornerstone Building at Richmond and York, knowing that one of the significant gaps that was ongoing that building was not able to address was for many of the young moms and the young families that were experiencing homelessness. Most of the units in the Cornerstone Building are bachelor's apartments, and 12 of them are actually dorm style, and of the remaining 18 are mostly bachelor's apartments and 4 one-bedroom apartments. So not really suited to families, although even within that space, we do have a couple young families that live in the building, young moms that are expecting babies that are in the building, and the goal is to find something more suitable to them. So there's a significant gap in this community for affordable housing for young families. We wanted to create a space and create a project that actually blends in with YOU's existing model. And YOU's existing model is all around providing wraparound supports and services for young people that need supports in our community. So to highlight, what do? We offer, I'll start at the bottom of those three bullets there, career services. Youth Opportunities Unlimited was created in 1982 fundamentally to help address that gap that young people face in accessing the job market. And that is that catch-22, that it's very difficult to jump into the job market when you don't have the experience and you can sit across your prospective employer and say, here's what I've done before, therefore you must have confidence that I can do what you're looking for me to do. Without that, they don't really have anything that they can actually sell themselves to get in the job market. So YOU runs a variety of employment skills programs, job placement programs, and so on. And at this point, we serve about 3,000 young people a year. That by itself isn't enough to actually particularly meet the needs of folks that are more vulnerable, folks that are experiencing more challenges with limited education, certainly homelessness, certainly other challenges that they may be facing. So we've delved into looking at how do we support those folks, but with a deeper service model. So one is social enterprise, and with that, some of you would know our You Made It Cafe. Some of you might be customers of our recycling services, where you might have received gift baskets or jams that are produced by Youth Opportunities Limited. Those are all just amazing props and amazing training platforms that allow us to give young people that are coming into our programs some hands-on experiences to understand what a job is all about and understand what workplace demands of them by actually working in a workplace that we can create. So, for example, at our cafe, on average, we put out 350 meals a day. And Lori will know that, whether you're putting out 100 meals a day or 1,000 meals in a day, there's a lot of precision that needs to go with that for those 100 or 1,000 customers to walk away feeling satisfied. And every single day, again, like Lori and everybody else in this room will know, you're only as good as your last meal. And if something goes badly, that stays with you for a long time. So we got into it because we wanted for the stakes to be high. We wanted a learning environment that will actually impact their day-to-day living. And if you know how to cook and you can take your own food security, whether you decide to work in the industry or not, you've actually acquired a lot of skills that will change your life. So we do on average about 350 meals a day, and much of that is as a platform to train young people, not just to work in the industry, but to work. And finally, the third platform that we do is around affordable housing. I mentioned the Cornerstone building, and we've been expanding our affordable housing platform for some time because we know that when young people experience a lack of housing, how do you actually get into employment opportunities? How do you consider what your dreams are, what your goals are, what you want your life to all be about, if in fact every single day is a struggle about where am I going to stay tonight? Should I go back to that shelter? Should I try to crash with a friend? Is the option to go home again? Those kinds of things. We want to help young people find paths out of that wheel. So YOU is looking all together, and we have a few projects on the go. We'll focus on New Edition, but all together, YOU is looking to solve youth homelessness in our community. And so that means creating a shelter. So we're working on a youth shelter that is in the east end of the city over on Clark Road. But that is a shelter, and we know what a shelter is all about. This one will be specific to youth. And then on over to expanding the ongoing affordable housing, which is permanent housing platform. So young people that are either staying with friends, living virtually on the streets, and literally on the streets, or in shelters and so on, helping them find a path to permanent housing. We're embarking on what is, I think, a bold new plan. Dr. Osage talked earlier about the Youth Wellness Hub. That is a component of this project. Again, it's a wraparound model. It's not just about, in our minds, building another affordable housing unit, but how do you actually put it all together? We focus on young moms and young families because we really want to focus on some of our most vulnerable population and to pick up on what we were just learning about. And that is that if you can address a family's needs, you're addressing not only that young mom and that young family, but you're actually addressing in particular those young children as well. And if you can provide housing security and food security and a wraparound model so that people can grow into healthy young members of our community, you're helping that family, but you're also helping your community in a very long term as well. we brought a home movie. So we're going to show you a video rather than just talking to you for 10 minutes and tell you a bit about what this project's all about.
The apartment we were living on was not healthy.
I found out I was pregnant and I was like, okay, well, this place is disgusting. I don't even like being here, so why would a baby like being here?
When I met YOU, I was living under a bridge, keeping warm any way I could.
I'd had my daughter and a year had passed and I had no idea where to start, how to find work, how to get childcare.
I am adopted and my birth mother was 14 years old when she had me and therefore, you know, required a lot of support.
So the new addition is about stability and providing the integrated services of housing, mental health, primary health care, vocational training, education, whatever her skills needs are, they can be met here.
It's the youth, it's that fragile age of from 12 to 30, formative years where if your confidence is boosted, you will fly. And if you're stressed by life and its complications, you can fall between the cracks. It's so important to give everybody a good start.
Let's look at what YOU has already done with downtown. You know, you took a derelict building and made it into a thriving environment where there's a successful business, there's people living and thriving.
I think the New Addition campaign is faithful to the general YOU model in that it's what it's really trying to do is create sustainable futures for young moms and young kids at a very fragile part of both their lives.
We want to stop with a given generation, and we want to make that next generation have the advantages that many of the rest of us had.
This is Autumn Riviere, Sophia Davis Stoll. Honestly, I want her to rule the world. If anything, I wish, like Beyonce. I mean, not like in a terrible dictator way. I mean, I just want to be able to give her opportunities in life to get there.
The new addition is about breaking the cycle, pulling people out from difficult, complex, often chaotic lives and giving them the stability and the supports so that they can grow, be strong, and provide for not just themselves but for their families.
I hope that she never lives a day that I lived and make even more of a change than I do in my lifetime.
I want to give my daughter and myself a good life and not have to struggle in some of the ways that I've had to. I want her to, just have a solid foundation.
For me, success would look like children who were born or grew up in New Addition thriving. Young women who receive support and housing here coming back and telling new women that it's going to be okay. It's going to turn out okay. Look at me. Look how well I've done.
We do not have anything like the New Addition, and we rely on our donors for us to be successful. You know, if you truly believe that this is a cause that you can get behind, we want to hear from you, and we would love to share more information about our campaign.
I'll tell you a little story about how all that works. So one of the people is in that video, for example, some of those people lived in our building, some of them have not lived in our building, but they've all been pretty active at programs at YOU. One of the young families that was profiled in that building lived in another affordable place, actually in the northwest end of the city, had childcare out in White Oaks area, and worked in our cafe. She was a single mom. Every single day she had a 2-hour commute to get her daughter to childcare. She'd be riding the bus, and she was around 20 years old, and hopping on a bus was a challenge some days because she would hear people whispering about her. And what she would hear one particular day, she was telling me, children having children. And so for somebody that's riding a bus, committing every single day a 2-hour commute for a job that was minimum wage because you have a dream for your family that's different than what you've experienced, is very difficult. So that was a 2-hour commute every day. We brought her into our campaign cabinet because we wanted to fund the volunteers that help us fundraise to really learn from the young people who go through our programs what this is all about. was trying to be dramatic, just told her story. She talked about that to our community each way. She talked about her daughter now going to daycare, so getting pink eye and runny noses and all the stuff that all of our kids and grandkids have when they start going out in the world. The difference being that the provider would call her up and say, you got to get here now. Your daughter is sick and you can't bring her back here until she's no longer sick. And one of the other young moms that was around that table, she said, you know what, I've been a single mom. I've had to drop my kid off in daycare before just because you have to some days. And I've never been spoken to like that. That has everything to do with this young woman's age. That has everything to do with this young woman feeling pretty disconnected, not having a lot of advocates out in the community. And when she wasn't at our cafe, she wasn't being paid. So her balance was always, if I miss too much work, too much time, or if I stay away, although I know you guys are always supportive, you're not going to take my job away from me for missing time because my daughter's sick. I have to get her into daycare because if I miss so many days, she loses her spot because it's a subsidized daycare spot and she'll lose that spot. So I have to get her well enough, quickly enough to get her back into daycare so that spot isn't taken, knowing that when I'm not here for work, I'm also not getting paid. So it's quite a cycle. So how do you go through that cycle and get ahead? That young woman found a way to get ahead, and she actually, YOU hosted Biz After 5 at our building last spring, and she happened to be sent there by her new employer, who said, you know, we're a member of the chamber, we'd like to go to Biz After 5. I can't make this one, can you go? And it just so happened to be the one that YOU was hosting. So she went from being a participant in our programs, struggling on those day-to-day basis, to actually coming back 6 months later, representing her employer, and she's had a couple of promotions since then, has a great income, has a great family life, but really, so many things could have gone wrong. She may never have gotten there, and if she didn't get there, where would her daughter get to? So that's what this program is all about. So we have a plan to show the floor plan. So the project we're talking about is over at Richmond and York on the northwest corner. You'll see some family members have stepped up already. So one of them is the Smith family. So the building will be named after Joan Smith. The placeholder is Joan Smith Building for Youth. It'll be something a bit more warmer than that, but certainly Joan's name will be in there. And that gives you an image of what we're looking at. So there's 3 sections of this building. The southern section, we're building up to 6 floors. And that's right now an open bar. The middle section is 1 floor now, so we're putting 4 floors on there, so that'll be 5 floors. And then the third section is already painted brown. There's a great big Alexander Keith's clock that hangs on that, and that's already intact, and we're keeping the outside of that intact, cleaning it up, but on the inside we're actually starting to build what will be that youth wellness hub that Dr. Osach spoke about before. So altogether, that's the new addition project. This gives you an example of what one of the floor plans will look like. So if you look at the very top of your screen, you see the gray area. That's the section that is already built, the built form, the 4-story building the clock hangs on. So there's 4 apartments in that building right now on floors 3 and 4. Floors 1 and 2 will be part of that youth wellness hub. You're looking at something from the 3rd floor right now. So that hard gray line is just the wall that separates those 2 buildings, but they're all part of the same site. The colored schemes look at different kinds of footprint on different apartments. So it's an integrated model. It's all affordable housing. There's 35 apartments altogether being built. Blue is 1 bedroom, green is a bachelor, and the pinkish color is a 2-bedroom apartment. So it'll be a mix of families in there, so therefore a mix of apartments. Not everybody coming into this building will be a young family or a young mom. That is the priority clientele. So that means, for example, if an apartment is available and there's a waiting list or there's applications coming in and one application from a young mom or a young family and another from a single individual, we always work from a diversion point of view because we're a housing first provider as well. But if that spot's going to go to anybody, it goes to that family if that's the one that meets their needs ahead of the individual. So we're all about creating a wellness hub, and we talked a bit about that, and so I can't list all the providers that are going to be in there, but I can tell you that certainly the FEMAP program is a very interested partner that would move its program into this building. In addition to that, Addiction Services Thames Valley, Canadian Mental Health Association, Thames Valley Addiction School Board, of course, Youth Opportunities with our employment and our career services. We're trying to build a space that is very people-centered, not organization-centered. And by that, I mean that if a young family, young individual walks in, or a parent that walks in and says, gosh, you know, my kid's 17 years old, not doing well, scares the heck out of us, we don't know what to do, have you got any ideas for us? There'd be something for them, and it wouldn't be, well gosh, if you drove up to the north end of the city, you'd find this one organization over there, and they might be able to help you out, but if not, then go to this other place and maybe ask for so-and-so and so on. It's all gonna be there under one hub. So for the young families, and particularly the young people that are coming and going from this place, it won't matter that there's 9 or 10 different organizations in there. We'll get to know, well, Steve's the guy that does the housing, John's the guy that does this, and Betty's the person that does that, and so on, rather than 7 different organizations. It operates under one service model. That gives an image of the open concept space that we're looking at. So that's a rendering of what the space might look like. Very open. It's a beautiful old building. And that was a big attraction to us, the fact that it is non-institutional. There's 14-foot ceilings in there, lots of exposed brick. And right now we're starting on phase 1. So phase 1 is where that dial hangs off. And that's that 4-story building that you see in the earlier image. The upper floors are already apartments, they're staying intact. Floor 2 and floor 1, we're actually redesigning that space to make room for Youth Opportunities Unlimited, our career services employment programs. We rent space right now where we're at. We pay about $140,000 a year to rent space from someone else. Well, we can save ourselves operating money just by moving in here. And so that's step 1, it starts creating that wellness hub. Phase 2 is when we can build out the rest of the building.
All right, so with where we stand currently financially, the project itself in total is $15.7 million. It is a large project cost, and we're looking for the community to step forward with $8.2 million of that. Over the last 18 months, we've seen some very significant growth in that campaign. 18 months ago, we were sitting at $1.5 million. We've now just surpassed $5.5 million raised. And so we are well on track to meet that $8.2 million goal with the community's continued support, though. So we're really excited that with the property, we've purchased that property, we're working on it, and it is currently operating debt-free. We have no mortgage against that property at the moment. And as well as we move forward, you can see that we still need that community support to get from 5.5 to 8.2, but we're well on track. We've got some major donors that have stepped forward, and we're seeing more and more of a groundswell from within the community, and that's what we're looking for Rotary's assistance with. We want Rotary to make sure that they realize that there's some fantastic opportunities to make a difference in the community and to really affect those that are most in need. And we want Rotary to say you're in terms of making a difference, both financially with resources, but also helping to spread the word about YOU and our need within the community, making sure that all of London realizes that there is the opportunity to make a true impact, and we're hoping Rotary can do that in helping to say you're in. And I'm going to, I know we're short on time, so I'm going to throw it back to Steve for a final word here.
So in our proposal, we didn't ask you for a specific amount. Instead, what we asked for is here's a list of levels of recognition, and should you choose the organization, you'll see along with that the recognition that would go with that. You'll see the levels that we've suggested. I can tell you that we had an anonymous donor just last week saying that he's very interested in looking for a matching opportunity. I can't stand in front of you and promise this would be the matching opportunity, because that would depend on the level of gift, actually, because he's looking for a substantial one. He has no upper cap on it, but he wants, because there is no upper cap, he wants to make it a significant opportunity. And what he's saying is over the next couple of months, and we're reaching out to a few folks in the community, if you can get a significant gift lined up, I will match that. And there's no cap on that. So there's an opportunity to look at it at a gift as a even more significant gift, depending on the the level of pledge that you're able to make to the campaign. Certainly up to a 5-year commitment would be one that works very well with us. I do want to confirm that out of the 5.5, all of that is from the community. There's no government money in that money yet. There will be government money down the road, but the 5.5 is all individuals and corporations who have stepped forward and made that contribution. Are there any questions? Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you to each of the presenters. As you can see by the clock, we've gone a fair bit past the 1 o'clock that we had dreamed that might be possible with 10-minute presentations. But we also knew that today would be a challenge for that in terms of time. So we're going to ask Bob Early to do his little bit about me on another occasion. And John, in terms of Sergeant at Arms, just maybe level one big fine. You will. But what's this?
That's the tickets. We have our draw.
We have to have our draw. So come on up here, John. And while you're doing that, Lori, there will be an email going out. It will have summaries of all of the presentations, opportunities for comments, and there will be a ranked ballot with it so that you can rank each of the presentations and the opportunities. And then once that is gathered up and the vote is counted, the recommendation from the local service committee will come to the board for further discussion. So as you have questions and comments, you can work through your board members to pass on those the comments. But it's hoped that we will adopt a project here that will make some impact in alleviating homelessness and poverty in our community. Steve?
I believe it's our hope is by March 7th, it's the 4th today, we hope to have the decision made by the 7th. So we're asking everybody to make a decision soon.
Yeah, the email will contain that information, so we hope that you'll return that and it will go back to Lori for the ballot, the tabulation before the 7th.
Very quickly, we got our number there. That's our winner.
If you're the holder of 967349, we got $140 in the deck pot. Well, we have deck of cards, of course, you have to hold the clearance page.
Oh, Lori's got it.
Lori has the second.
Yay, Lori.
Money back for your meal, at least.
Thanks, John.
$140.75.
Queen of Spades, she wins $140.
I'm not sure where you get the money.
We'd like to say thank you to all of you who have attended here today to hear the presentations, and thanks to each of the presenters. As we outlined, we know we can only choose one of those four. If we choose one, but we are, I think, edified as to the conditions that exist in our city and of the efforts that are being made in the city to alleviate some of these, what can be termed crisis situations in terms of poverty and homelessness. So thanks to each and every one of our presenters today. Some dates for all of us to keep in mind. Return the ballots to Lori by the 7th. The Sports Celebrity Dinner is coming up. The Big Fab Rotary Dinner, we want you to consider, and of course, the East Coast Kitchen Party and the golf tournament coming up as well. Some events that are on the Rotary calendar, and we would urge you to read the COG and catch up on any of the other dates that are significant as well. There's quite a list there. Thanks for your attention today, and thanks to all who have helped to put this meeting together, especially Heather Broadhead, who is in Florida, but put all of the information package together, and Steve Knox, who has helped to bring things together today as well. We'll leave you this. This is not the time for us to say somebody ought to do that. Our words must be, we will do it. That's from the Rotarian, 1961. If there's nothing more right now, for the good of Rotary, be the inspiration. You got some good stuff to collect.